And I'm running for United States Congress. Where does my opponent, Seth Moulton, stand on the economy and jobs here in the Massachusetts 6th District? Well, in the midst of the worst unemployment rates in the nation and as high as 25% in the city of Lynn, Moulton has stated his support for higher taxes, more red tape and regulations that will crush more businesses, drive out jobs, and lower your take-home pay. In contrast, as a small business owner myself, I will fight for local businesses, bring jobs and companies back to the district, and push for lower taxes. That will mean more money in your pocket.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Think Tomorrow. As always, Kyle Wolf here, sitting alongside with John Paul Moran, running for the Massachusetts 6th District. How's it going, John?
Good, Kyle. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hello to your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I wanted to just obviously introduce your video there. That's one of your campaign videos among many other clips that you have that you could find on your Facebook page and your other platforms there. But sure. Definitely wanted to get, I guess, a little reflection on that. Like, you know, what obviously that's your plan with the economy and your opponent, Seth Moulton. Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, when it comes to the economy, I have three major things that I talk about with my campaign. I mean, there's 100 broken things in Massachusetts and the district because we've had, let's see, I can't swear anymore. We've had doorknobs. I guess I'll say the word door. Is that fair? Can I say that? Yeah. We had doorknobs running not only Seth Moulton, but for years before him, for the last quarter century, we've had people that know nothing that just wanted to collect a check and show up and get paid for doing nothing for the district. So the economy is my one of my top things, securing our economy and jobs. And right now, the left, I mean, we have the highest unemployment in the country now for the last two months in a row. We have the highest unemployment perhaps in the state at 25% in the city of Lynn. And Seth Moulton, what does he have to say? You know, he said red states have what's coming to them for coronavirus. So he hopes everybody suffers as much as Massachusetts because it's not fair that dopey blue states are doing worse than much smarter red states. So lowering taxes, obviously, lowering regulations, freeing us from terrible, costly regulations is one of the reasons why we have such a good economy right now. And it was, you know, decades of thousands and millions of, literally millions of tax codes around the country, just stifling business. And that, and then of course, bringing jobs back from communist China and from unfriendly countries overseas, super, super important, bringing manufacturing back, you know, common sense things that we need to do to get our economy going. And the Democrats and Seth Moulton are on the opposite side of all of those things, against the American people.
Well, that was one of the things, John, that really stood out about your campaign to me, at least personally, is that you were big on talking about the economy. One of the things that we saw today was the Dow had hit 29,000, right? And that's something that it kind of scratched the surface before COVID back in March. Pretty remarkable V-shape. I mean, probably the best V-shaped recovery I've ever seen.
Well, you know, we have a guy, you know, people will complain about Donald Trump, but you know what, Seth, I mean, we have Joe Biden that never ran a candy store. He's been in government for almost 50 years. I mean, that's the kind of complete nonsense that's these people running our government. They couldn't run Joe Biden couldn't run a color photocopier, and I'm not sure Seth Moulton could either, to be honest. And these people are running the United States government. And Donald Trump, I mean, he's done so much more than these morons. And yeah, he talks tough, and his personality is, you know, he's not everybody's cup of tea, but he knows his business. He talked about the biggest V-shaped recovery, and everybody mocked him. And look what's happening. The best V-shaped recovery ever. But I will say that doesn't reflect all the pain we've suffered and we are suffering, because still a very high percentage, I've heard anywhere from maybe 20 to 30% of small business closed forever. So, and in the Black community, I believe the number is close to 50%. And everything the left is doing is destroying, especially everything they do is just so unbelievable. What they preach actually destroys Black and brown and minority Americans more than everybody else. And they claim to speak for these people. So the amount of destruction caused by the shutdown, which is more and more evident every day that it was completely unnecessary, except for common sense things. You might not pack people into a crowded nightclub which that needs to come back eventually, right? Sooner rather than later. But the things that the people in government that did not follow the science, they followed public, I don't know what they were following, but they weren't following science and simple math when they made these decisions to crush small businesses. Complete unnecessary pain. Big restaurants, businesses out of business all over, unnecessary.
A lot of things you just said there really stood out. So you mentioned small business, which is a perfect transition to that, right? One of the things that I'm doing with ThinkTomorrow, and I mentioned this to you when I met you about a month ago, John, is we're doing Small Business Mondays. So and you mentioned nightclubs, so another resonation there. I had done an interview with a friend of mine, DJ RDV, Artie Vieira. So shout out to him. But he's somebody that was suffering immensely, right? That was his main source of income. He's well known nationally, and I think he even mentioned he's been international, right? So that's something, I consider that's certainly a small business, right? And he really, he did, weddings, club events. He's well known in Massachusetts, especially in the Boston market. He certainly was one that was immensely impacted, and you can't even, in his case, he couldn't even do anything outside for a while. So,
and that is an example. I am so outraged, and all right, I'll say it. I'm pissed off. Right, what's happening is outrageous. The math on it. Okay, so I was an MIT scientist before running my businesses, and I spent 5 years working at MIT Lincoln Laboratory in a very complex space telescope. Right. But in reality, you don't need to be a rocket scientist effectively to know these basic things. That in the history, at least in the past few decades, the rule is you don't quarantine the healthy. That's never been, there was consensus around the world, everywhere. You don't quarantine the healthy, right? Now we look at the pandemic. Now the data is just out that 6% of people that have COVID actually died of COVID. The other 94% died of comorbidities with COVID, 2.6 on average. So the vast majority, almost everybody died with multiple comorbidities, as in, lung cancer, urinary, renal failure.
Pneumonia was
pneumonia, all that. And I hate to say it, but that would have killed most of those people anyway. It's proven. It's the science. The math is there. That's less than 10. I believe the number was around 9,600 people that actually died of COVID through this whole crisis. Now, 85,000 people died of pneumonia and the flu last flu season. 85,000, and the world kept going, and we didn't shut the country down over 85,000. That's a big number, but 70,000 people died of opioids a couple years ago. And that's okay with Democrats or the left, or apparently with anybody, but it's not okay to have 10,000 people die of COVID. So when you look at the numbers and what we did and what we destroyed, all the industries and businesses we destroyed, I understand about 75% of theaters and stages will be closed forever. Musicians, actors, all, stage actors. I just don't get, when you look at the numbers, it doesn't warrant it. All these states of emergency, these governors and people that have shut down their states with such extreme measures. Governor Whitmer saying you can't buy seed and paint and all this crazy stuff. And now the number comes in and people that actually died of COVID. I'm so mad. My business got hurt. I know so many businesses with just horrible stories. And you know what? It's a war on the middle class. It's more in the middle class and the and small businesses. That's what it is.
Wow. So very, very powerful. And honestly, that's the truth, right? What else was open when Home Depot was open, when Dunkin' Donuts, McDonald's, every major corporation, yet Manny's Hardware down the street in Taunton, funny enough, can't be open, right?
That's collusion. You have government, big government colluding with big business, lots of deals being made, lots of corruption, but the small business owner, first of all, they don't have lobbying power. They don't have the kind of money to line the pockets of these sleazy politicians like Seth Moulton. Okay, did I just say he took money? I'm not sure he did, but that kind of sleaze is out there throughout. And I'm not just picking on poor old Seth Moulton, but I'm talking about your average. This is in Congress, mostly on the left, but it does exist on the right as well, clearly. And what's happening is, small business owners, first of all, you can't get money out of a small business, right? So the lobbying is not there, but also it's a threat to the left, especially because they can't be controlled. They're running their own businesses. They're not being told how to live and what to think. And that's a threat. That's a threat to an authoritarian state, the future authoritarian state of the left. So they love to see. They're probably like this. Oh, all those bad Republicans, because most of them are Republican. You work for a living, you work hard. You're not going to vote for socialism. And so it really is, to me, it's an absolute war on the small business owners, with which almost half the country works for. So we should unite, and there'd be nothing more powerful than a united group of all small business owners together is 100 times bigger than the biggest corporations in America.
I could probably follow up with almost every one of those points, but one of the things you mentioned at the very end was unity, right, John? So something that at least I've seen firsthand specifically, and this is just based on my experience, sample size here, is talking to Republicans and actually getting them to come on my show, like someone like yourself, right, is usually much easier to get than some of the Democrats. I've reached out to dozens, right? I've had a few. And I think, especially in Massachusetts, this is an opportunity, at least in my opinion, for the Republican Party to show some unity. So obviously we need it nationally. If the Republican Party would need it nationally, essentially, if they want to succeed, right? And President Trump and whatever, what have you, right? But where do you see some like some kind of togetherness, I guess, if you will, in regards to the Republican Party? I know like you're friendly with some of the other candidates like Julie Hall, Rayleigh Campbell, some of the other Republicans I've had a chance to meet. So where do you see that unity?
Well, unity is the message. The first word in my message is unity, liberty, and opportunity for all. So it's my slogan, right? So unity is the first message in my slogan. And I look at the American flag, and that's what the definition. Unity is the 50 states coming together, right? Liberty, the white and the red stripes are the blood we spilled to defend liberty. And then unity, opportunity is the end result. Because we have unity, where you're unified as one nation, and we have liberty that we protect and fought for, and that's all going to be vanquished in 2 months. If the left takes over, there is no U.S. I don't believe we can even call ourselves the United States of America on November 4th if the left is the House and the White House. That would be a nightmare scenario. But getting back to that, then opportunity is the result. Opportunity is the fruit that's born from unity and liberty. That's what gives the great American dream, right? And so unity, I'm working with all the probably more so than most any other state. We are working together, right? We're friendly with each other, and we're trying to be, we're trying to share messaging, and as well as Kevin O'Connor for Senate. And the thing is, though, we don't have any real power in office. So unity, well, campaigning is great to get in office, but the unity has to happen with elected officials once we're in. So we need to get in office so we can unify on policy and get things moving. Because as much as I'm looking forward to getting in Congress, I'm not looking forward to getting in Congress if it's Democrat control. I can't get anything done. So I'm really hoping we have to take back the House for America and for my sanity, because when I'm there, I want to get things done. I don't know how I'm going to be able to enjoy working hard, fighting socialists all day long that won't want to do anything to save America. So we have to take back the House.
Interesting. And that seems to be a very unified message in ways that you could be unified in the Republican Party that in the past has had some setbacks and had some issues with some division in the party, right?
We have to unify around going back to unity. It's simple. It's not simple, but it is simple. You have to make it simple. We're fighting for the American people, for the everyday American people. It's not the class controlling everybody else for their benefit, which is the case in Washington and especially on the radical left, right? But on the right, it does. There are establishment people who are also not doing their jobs. Your job is to serve the people, not serve yourselves. Okay, and if we keep our eye on that, and we're honest and we're truthful to our mission, we'll unify around those principles, and also the idea we're serving the people. So limited government. It's got to be limited government, unifying ourselves around that, and serving and protecting the American people and defending our constitutional liberties has got to be our main focus. Of course, security, obviously the number one thing, security, backing our police. Of course, there needs to be some police reforms. Of course, there's some police brutality, but I can go over the statistics showing how crazy the left's claims are about the police. It's just like with COVID, a shutdown destroying trillions of dollars, millions of people are going to be hurt. I'm sure many more are going to die from drugs and alcohol and screenings they didn't get for cancer and everything else. All that combined is going to be many, many, many more times more than the people that they report they saved. which now is going to be maybe 10,000 people that died of COVID. And so when you look at the numbers, going back to unity, I'm all about unity, unifying our party, but unifying our country. Country before party. We have to unify America. We can't unify America when one major party wants to destroy America. If they don't want unity, they want people like me gone and people like you and me gone. And that's not unity. You can't get unity when one team wants to destroy, eliminate, and vanquish completely the other team like Seth Moulton does and Nancy Pelosi does, and they talk about it, and they will do it if they get their way. They're going to stuff the Supreme Court, get rid of the filibuster, and you'll never see another Republican president. And soon you'll never even see another Republican congressman if they have their way.
Well, you mentioned the point of exactly what that was. Like, it just I guess how they acted with one another. Excuse me. But it seems like there's just so much division even on the left side as well. So this is an opportunity, as we mentioned, to have some unity within the Republican side, because you have the far left that they claim to be democratic socialists, like the Bernie Sanders, right? AOC, the squad, if you will, which we could go on about that. And then you have allegedly the Joe Biden, who is the moderate, right? And he claimed the other day that, do I look like a socialist? I guess was his words. So
is it, do I look like, or you act? You know what they say, if it talks like a duck and walks like a duck and sounds like a duck. I mean, he says, do I look like a socialist? You're a 100-page pan that Bernie Sanders, he's not a socialist. Come on, he's a communist. Let's get the wording right. Socialist is way too soft of a word. We have Sanders, crazy Bernie. He imports an entire plan basically into his platform, which is socialism. That's what Bernie Sanders is. AOC's Green New Deal is socialism. It is socialism by definition. Seth Moulton says, oh, I'm not a socialist. I believe in free markets. Well, $93 trillion New Deal, what is it, $300,000 or $400,000 per American it will cost, and it won't work. It'll be California rolling blackouts because none of their crazy, the wind stops and there's no more electricity. I mean, what, really? It's like Flintstones. We gotta have Flintstones around because it's so crazy because they're not scientists. They can't even pull out a calculator and know how to use that. I mean, these people are crazy. So yes, Biden is a radical socialist because all the people around him and those policies are radical socialist policies.
Interesting. So bringing it back to the race, and the races, obviously we saw an update yesterday for the primary.
Yes.
So we saw a few things. So it looks like on the Senate race, the bigger one, Kevin O'Connor on the Republican side is the nominee for the GOP, the Republican, and Ed Markey pulled a win against Kennedy. That one surprised me, especially against Ed Markey. I mean, Ed Markey is obviously the incumbent, but when is the last time a Kennedy's lost? Ever?
Well, I'm glad. I don't like either of them, clearly, right? I mean, they're both like, I can talk about the episode of South Park where you have two different choices, but those are probably words I'm not supposed to say as a future congressman. But people probably get my meaning. But you have, Kennedy. I particularly had it for two reasons. One is he's a disgrace to the Kennedy name because I love John F. Kennedy, and John F. Kennedy was taken out by there was forces behind that. I think most people agree. He was messing up the apple cart in Washington, going after what was not their form of a deep state, and
he was the truth. He had a lot of truth.
The truth. He was for limited government. He was we almost World War III on our doorstep because he didn't want socialism going into our hemisphere, right? And now we have the Democrat Party that openly embraces socialism. They're out of the socialist closet. They're proud of it. They're waving their flags. We're socialists. We love socialism. Who cares if it killed 150 million people last century? Let's have more of it. Crazy. But between that, JFK was in the a big NRA member, had plenty of guns. I mean, he was the opposite of every Democrat today. So he was a good Democrat, and a comment from Tino, JFK was the last good. I mean, I'm sure there was Democrats in smaller offices and smaller offices that are decent, but when it comes to president, he was the last good Democrat president for sure. And there's no meaning to the word Democrat Party. It's not about democracy. They are about authoritarian socialist control. And the fact that they're called Democrats is weird because, like everything else, it's the opposite of truth. And so I'm not happy that his redheaded stepchild, whatever you call it, I call him his redheaded grand stepchild.
I don't know if I should be laughing right now, but that was funny.
Yes, I mean that's good. I mean, the guy, the drool out of his face when he commented at that time. And his policies were so far crazy town left, crazy land left. And it just a disgrace to the Kennedy, the Kennedy name. If he was anything like JFK, even 50% like JFK, I would have been go for it. But he's just a disgrace to the Kennedy name, and I'm glad he lost because he ruined the Kennedy name. What a great honorable President Kennedy was, and what a disgrace that guy is to the name.
I don't know about on the Democratic side, but one of the things that stuck out about Kennedy, at least on my opinion, is that comparatively to JFK that you had mentioned, right? He wanted mandatory vaccines. I don't think the JFK of the 60s would have required everybody to get a vaccine. Right? So I don't know if that affected anything and, got Markey that extra, whatever it was. But I mean, Markey's clearly the corporate Democrat, at least in my view. So, I mean,
Well, and then don't forget Monica Cannon Grant in that whole episode that people on our side probably know about. The Democrats tried covering up, but thank you, Turtle Boy, for exposing that.
I saw that.
Turtle Boy put this out. Kudos to Turtle Boy because he was so hurt. He was ahead until Turtle Boy came out with that. And the racist rantings from that evil woman. I mean, what she said was evil with a capital E and disgusting. And the fact that, and she's the face of Black Lives Matter for Boston. So, the sentiment is great. I'm never going to say the sentiment. I mean, GOP was formed to stop slavery. If the Democrats wanted to keep their slaves, and they were mad that they lost the war because they went to war against the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, because he wanted to stop slavery. And now somehow or other Republicans are the bad guys, but it was Democrats all along that were causing the problems. And she has the nerve to go out and say all kinds of disgusting things about Rayla Campbell, who's
that was like a 20-minute video. I couldn't even watch it. It was disgusting.
And she's got she thinks she can do whatever. She got the mayor wrapped around her finger, Mayor Walsh. I mean, she does whatever she wants because she'll threaten you with. She's going to get a rally at your house or your business and threaten you with a riot if you don't toe her line. So I think she thought she was untouchable and that she could get away with it. But you know what? The American people in Massachusetts, the American people are tired of their thug brown shirt tactics, which is they're basically the brown shirts. They are the modern day brown shirts for the Democrats. That's why they don't criticize Black Lives Matter or Antifa. And if the sad thing is a lot of people that support Black Lives Matter, they don't understand how terrible the organization is. But I don't blame them for saying, yeah, there's violence and we have to protect Black lives, and I get that, and I'm with that, the sentiment. But the cause of it is because of progressive policies, not because a bunch of conservatives in white robes. That's not it. It's the progressive policies causing it. Number one, causing this disparity, provably just was causing the disparity. And number two, that woman, that woman wouldn't want a wild rant attack, and Turtle Boy exposed it. And I think that really hurt Kennedy because he would not back away. He didn't have the guts to stand up to that. And who could be in office? Yeah, you should not be allowed to be in office and get elected when you're silent on stuff like that.
That's what it takes. I mean, in a lot of cases, silence is worse than saying something radical, right? President Trump has said some radical things, but there's one thing that I've noticed is he's not usually silent when he needs to be outspoken, right? And he's not afraid to be outspoken. I like that personally.
And
but
they say silence is violence, but they're the ones screaming and causing violence. And then when there is real violence and when there's hatred and bigotry, they're silent. My friend Brandon Straka from Walkway. Does your audience know the Walkway movement?
I don't think we've seen that one yet. No.
So hashtag Walkway is a group that's been around for a few years, started by Brandon Straka, who's now a friend of mine. He was a hairdresser in New York, gay like me, and he says, "Sir," he woke up. He had that come to Jesus moment where he saw how terrible the left was after Trump beat Hillary. When we put it all together, now he formed the national movement with, I believe, millions of followers, or hundreds of thousands of people put in videos saying how they walked away from the Democrat Party, realizing that the Democrats are the problem, not the the intolerant, bigoted Democrats. Not all Democrats, but I should say radical left, because most Democrats are not. They're JFK Democrats. They just don't know how terrible the party became. Just like most people that support Black Lives Matter are decent people, they need to learn how the Marxist, anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, and actually a homophobic nature of the organization Black Lives Matter, not of the theme, and the two very different things.
Certainly, yeah.
So
agreed.
They attacked Brandon Straka in Washington when President Trump gave his talk last week, and when Rand Paul was attacked and threatened. He was out, and he was attacked, and they verbally attacked him. They called him the F word, okay? Viciously attacked him, homophobic, and they hit the phone out of his hand. They went after him physically. And if that shoe was in the other foot, if a Trump or a Republican supporter attacked a gay person outside the DNC and did that, there would be more cities burning from that. But they get away with it, no questions asked. They could be homophobic, racist, and anti-Semitic, and they get away with it. And it has to stop. It's a double standard.
Interesting you said that kind of like a walk away movement. I've seen that, and I've heard of that. I just didn't know that was the phrase for it. But I've also seen it with the African American community. So I have a few friends that I've added, and they were actually from California, and they're part of this Blexit movement. So instead of like Britain, like Brexit with Britain leaving.
Candace Owens started that, yeah.
Yeah, you know what? Oh, Candace Owens, right, with Turning Point USA, correct? Right.
Yeah.
So, and I've seen that more and more lately, and I've seen just everyday people just getting on that movement and joining it. And it's similar to what you're saying about the walk away movement in regards to for the LGBTQ community, if you will.
The way to be clear, it's not about Brandon is out of the closet like me, right? But that's his personal experience. But the whole movement is anybody walking away. So it's plenty of African Americans.
Oh, okay. It was overall. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, people that were primarily any people can walk away from the radical Democrat Party, which is not like JFK's party at all anymore, right? Including people that want, the JFK Democrats are voting for me. When I talk to JFK Democrats and people that are just not socialist and they're for America, almost every one of them says they're not voting for Moulton, they're voting for me when they hear my platform, because they're very proud to be Americans still, where the left says you have to hate America. And if you're gay, if you're black, you're Hispanic or whatever, you have to be in that party. And they will come out at you with the vengeance. I got death threats when I came out of the conservative closet and said, I'm gay, but I'm conservative. I had people threatening me, attacking me, physically trying to assault me. And I even had somebody that threatened. I called the FBI guy that said he was going to come and shoot me because I'm not allowed to be conservative and gay. And so that's my American closet. I say I've been in the gay closet, then I was in the conservative closet, and I got a lot more hell for coming out conservative than I did coming out gay, which was both very liberating. But now I see people are in the American closet. Think about it. You can't speak you can't go to work and talk that you're a Republican or you support Trump or maybe even John Paul Moran without worrying about your job or your reputation or being called a racist, right? And they'll come after you. Now they'll threaten to, burn down your business. And you know what? Enough is enough. Come out of the closet. No more silent majority. I hate those two words together. We have to be the bold, loud, proud Americans. I mean, if gay people can get out of the closet, then Americans have to say, if we stay in that closet, the left will win. So that's the idea of the American closet. Get out, because we're going to get crushed by these people if we don't stand up to these creeps that want to destroy our country. It's probably very, very small percentage of the population that's that violent and aggressive, but the rest of the 95% of us are cowering to it. And there's way more of us than them, but we're all cowering to it. So we have to stop them because they're going to win if we don't stand up.
Well, that was the weirdest thing I saw develop, and you mentioned it for a moment there, and I started to see it with back in May, really, was the whole, like, when people were getting fired or over just saying all lives matter, right? And this isn't even saying like something completely egregious. This is simply using hashtag all lives matter, and they posted it, and they were fired.
You lose your job over it, and I get it. The idea is that it's like it's trying to diminish the reality that Black Americans have. There's major
perception versus actual statement. Like, that's a perception.
The actual statement is completely. I mean, you have to be crazy to say all lives matter is a problem. But it's the radical PC culture that's going after. There's a narrative they're pushing, and that you have to bow to it. And I don't know if many people know this, but it was less than 10% of the population of Germany. Much less than 10% at the beginning. When they went to take power, the brown shirts were the ones that were local, loud, and they attacked you, and you would get fired, and you get physically threatened. That's how the Nazis, the brown shirts, took over. That's how up to 1936, when the Nazis took over, that's the tactics they used. And if you look at other aggressive authoritarian states, a small number of people inflict major control by threats and coercion and violence and force. And that's exactly what the Democrats are doing right now with their silence when it comes to Antifa and the Black Lives Matter movement, which, again, the ideology of it's okay. The idea of it Black Lives Matter, but the organization and their mission and how much they're hurting Black Americans with their actions is outrageous. And we have to stand up against it and say that, this is not acceptable. So come out of that American closet and be proud of being free Americans. And don't let these people scare you into submission, because, there's no way we'll lose if we stand up together. But if we all are afraid to battle, come out. I said this during the shutdown. Restaurants should have opened up all together and said, you know what? People sign a waiver to come in. They take a chance. Everybody says, I'm an American. Okay, maybe I'll sign a waiver to come in the store or go to this restaurant. I'll sign a waiver saying I can do it. But let people go back to work and sign waivers. Now we realize it's a tenth of as many people died just of COVID alone than they did from the flu and pneumonia last year. Why is this even still an issue? Safeguard the elderly, the people that are going to be vulnerable from it. But everybody else should be back to work, including bars and restaurants and music venues and everything else.
I certainly agree with that, because
they're out and they're not ignoring. Now they're ignoring the numbers. Here the numbers are out and they're making believe they're not. They're like, oh, let's just keep talking about 200,000 dead. Let's forget about 5% people dying from the actual disease. Let's keep pushing this narrative.
I sent that to a friend of mine who we have political differences, right? But I sent him and it was right from the CDC's website. This is as pure as it gets. And if it's not from CNN, he doesn't believe it. So I sent it to him and I said, it's 6% now. They revised the numbers and it's completely different than the 180, right? Or whatever it was. And still didn't believe it. So well, you can only do so much, right? You can only I'm not expecting to change people's minds, but I'm trying to show them facts and they don't want to believe it. Then it's kind of like, you can only do so much, right? You can only help people so much.
Well, when people see things burning and businesses burning, all right, and Black Americans had a 400% increase in business ownership under Trump in just 3.5 years. And now almost 50% of the small businesses are gone, okay? This is an intentional, it's like Jews for Nazis. That's like what we should think of Black Lives Matter, the organization. They say things like, okay, we're going to help Black Americans and we're going to fight for racial equality. Well, you know what? Where do you think the worst racial equality is in the country? The worst when it comes to economics, income, net worth, education. Where do you think those places are? You think, okay, Kansas, Arkansas, right? Utah, places that are very, 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 very conservative, or do you think it's like Washington D.C., L.A., New York, and Boston? Where do you think the worst disparities exist?
I mean, the media would probably say the suburbs, but I would say that the urban areas right in the cities. I mean, that's where
I'm talking about just, like the states, like you look at entire states too. You look at places that are run by Republicans with limited government.
Oh, specifically Democrat ran for sure, right?
Yeah. So it's progressive cities are the worst. The number one is DC, which has never had a white or Republican mayor in its history since it started self-governing in 1960 or so. So for 60 years, we had the most progressive government, and there's no lack of Black and brown Americans in positions of power. They've been in power there for 60 years, and it's the worst disparity. So when you look at it, it's like, wait a minute. What about all these crazy racists like in literally like Mississippi, where I believe that there's a segregationist, if I'm not mistaken. There's still like a crazy racist segregationist in I believe in Mississippi or something, right? But despite that, they have the lowest disparity between Black and white because they don't have these government programs. So I mean, they don't have this. They don't have overbearing socialist progressive programs that are destroying the family, and they have school choice. Cities do not. These Democrat-run cities are run by the teachers' unions in schools, so they do not have school choice. All the things that these progressives are fighting for are hurting Black families more. It's like, here's more. Here I'm the drug dealer. Here's more heroin. And people need to understand that that's what's happening. It's not, there is a disparity, but the disparity is it's because of progressive principles, not because of a bunch of Trump voters in white robes. It's not that. And there are people, there's racism. We have to always combat it, but that's not what's causing the pain for Black Americans. It's progressive policies. And if you look at the science and the math, the most progressive places have the biggest wealth and income and education disparities. Figure that one out.
Wow. Interesting. And before we segue, I thought of something, and back in, was it May with George Floyd, rest in peace to him. But one of the things that I think personally, at least my message when I even went out there and did a live video over it, because I thought that was a moment of unity, or could have been, right? It could have been, because everybody I thought understood that it was whatever you want to, it was just not right, right? What ended up happening, what we saw unfold, right? I thought that was an opportunity for them to act, for the country to be unified. Instead, it just got, it's been being destroyed currently because the left is playing. Well, my thing is, sorry to interrupt you, but you know, you have a video that shows just a cut, right? Like, let's say that one was 9 minutes. It was actually very long. It was quite disturbing. Then all of a sudden, the rest of the video got released, but it was the same video, same camera and everything. See, like, that's why I don't understand how they find more. But, and well, the body cam was later, obviously. But, you know, sometimes they have videos that 30 seconds is shown, then they're like, oh, we have the other 30 now. Where did it come from? It's the same camera, you know? So I don't understand. I think the media plays that game, right?
Yeah, it's definitely. There's a whole bunch of reasons. I mean, sometimes police have it for some reason, but the reality is this: is that my inside contacts that I have in Washington and other places are basically the idea here is that we are looking at the idea that this is a narrative that had to be told. It's this simple. Because Democrats know if they don't get 80% of black votes, give or take, that they can't win. So they were looking for this George Floyd thing happened. It was terrible. It was evil. But hiding the videotape and doing all that stuff and then pushing this narrative, this divisive narrative as a result, that was definitely had major political motivations. And it was unnecessary because I believe somewhere around 97, 90%, 80% of people in America agreed that this was murder. And I agreed it was murder. So there was no disagreement on that. So it shouldn't have been handled that way. And to your previous message from one of your viewers, we have to look at the good people. The reality is, yes, the vast majority of Americans are good people. They're good people. The problem is that the media has a narrative to tell, and they're going to take these fringe issues, and it doesn't only exist on the left. There are fringe crazies on the right that push a narrative that's divisive. And the obsession is about these very fringe edges, fighting, and the far left going obviously completely off the rails with this anti-police push, which will again only hurt black Americans, black and brown Americans surveyed. I believe the number is 80% want the same or more police. About 50% want the same police. About 30% want more police. So how can they say they're representing all black lives even when the vast majority of black people are like, wait a minute, we're screwed without police. You know how much crime is going to go up and the drugs, and it's just it's the fringes are the problem. But I'm focused as a congressman, so we're going to kind of get off track here. As your future congressman, my goal is to serve the people and everybody. Even if I disagree with you politically, my job is to serve the district and the people, the great people of our country. And these ideologues like Seth Moulton, who will just spit fire at you if you disagree with them. If you're a Republican, he said his own words, the red states have what's coming to them with coronavirus. I mean, things like that. I mean, come on. You're supposed to be representative for everybody in your district, almost 800,000 people. And, you know, as a good third of them, or probably close to half, consider themselves conservative. You're not their congressman too? I mean, I'm going to be the congressman for everybody, whether they agree with me politically or not. I'm there to serve the people. And we have to look at the good people in our country and stop this constant media barrage of hate and division. And don't tell me it's not ginned up by the media, because they get their stupid ratings from this stuff. They don't get views when everything's happy and good. They want to create ratings. They want to create division. So a lot of it's the media, and a lot of it's just people just not following they listen to the media, they don't question it, and they get all riled up, and you find people fighting each other, Black Lives Matter and pro-police. And I bet you sit them down for 5 minutes. I've talked to a lot of people. We all agree. The people that are, yes, I agree with you. There's a problem with disparity with Black and minority Americans. I agree. We just have to look at the facts and fix the problem. We don't blame everything on the police. I mean, there's problems with the police, but you don't blame it. That's just the last step in the process. The reason why it happened in the first place is because of all these disparities. Thank you, progressive policies.
Yeah, I mean, agreed with that. And if you have one issue or a couple like small incidences, like you've mentioned, if you look at the numbers, and I have, and I'm sure, and like you said, you have looked at the numbers as well, but there's definitely more things that are harming our minority community as a whole, right? Aside from police brutality, I think there's a lot more issues we could talk about. We can go right down the list.
Education is big. Is that's a major one, and that one the left is against. And here's another example of claiming to speak for Black and brown Americans, and it's anybody living in those inner cities, whether you're white or Black or Hispanic or Asian, they're all suffering about equally on a per person basis. It's just that unfortunately we have, the the dynamics of where different people live in America, and ended up with this scenario of such disparities between people in between black and brown and white Americans. But that has to close. I'm dedicated. Within 10 years, I want to see that there should be no reason for it to be that much of a, between people on average. There should be no reason for that much. I want to see those gaps closed. We're going to close those gaps if we give education, choice in education, and we stop these generations of welfare, which I'm convinced are meant to keep certain classes of certain people down in America to keep their votes coming. And that's wrong. So this is the fruit that you bear when you're going to play this game to get people's votes. You're going to keep them down to keep them vote Democrat. Like the LBJ said in 1964 when he passed the Civil Rights Act, one of the biggest racist presidents we've ever had, is like, I'm going to sign this reluctantly. Hold his nose as he'll sign it. A bill that was put through by majority Republicans, by the way, because he said we're going to have those people, and I won't say the explicit he used, voting for the next 200 years. It's documented in a book that was written about that situation. So this was a planned attack on the black family when they couldn't keep segregation going, when they lost the Civil War, and then they couldn't keep segregation and Jim Crow laws going. Then they accepted civil rights, and we say they have a new type of plantation. That's what Candace Owens has with their whole Brexit movement, is saying that this is a planned, really a terrible, evil plan to keep the votes coming by putting people in dependent situations with government, which ended up destroying many black families and white families too, but proportionally affected black families much worse. Right. And it's funny that you mentioned LBJ, because I always heard the story, the good story about him, right? And how he was great for minorities in general, right? And in reality, he signed it because he was, you should hear some of the things he said about black Americans. Horrible situations. I mean, look it up sometime. I can't repeat the things he said about drivers and other people. But he signed and said, we'll have them voting for the next 3 years. Okay, sign. Where do I sign up? We'll be in power. Think about it. It's really bad. It's really bad. And even just objectively looking at it, I think it's always been about power, at least for that side. I mean, corporate power, and you mentioned some of the issues that we've had as a nation, but it was mostly because of Democrat policies. And that's just looking at it objectively. This isn't... Obviously, Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and so like people that have actually made positive change for our country, at least just looking at it open-mindedly, and I'm sure there's like you said, there's some exceptions with like JFK, for example, on the Democratic front, but there were some Democrats. Yeah, he was a rebel in his own party, and that's why he was not favored by people. He was a rebel, so he was an outsider, and he was such a visionary. And he broke with the system. I mean, right? The Bay of Pigs, I mean, was unfortunately was a disaster, but there very well could have been the end of the world. We were close to nuclear war. We found out later if the generals got their way and they invaded Cuba and he kept pushing. He said, no, we're not going to do it. And they were going to almost form a coup against JFK, if I understand, at that point, because they believed they had to overthrow. There was talk about that apparently from some books I read. So the important thing is he stood up against the state at the time. I hate to use the word deep state because people think you're crazy, but I mean, if some people, the left will call you crazy. But the establishment at the time said they were going to. So except for JFK, I agree. There has been the GOP was formed. There were black Americans that helped form the first founding members of the GOP. There were black Americans that 10 years before the end of the Civil War. We're the biggest human rights organization in the world. The GOP is. There was never such a big pro-human rights organization in the world more than the GOP. And everything's turned on its head. Everything's turned on its head because what's happening today is just they're trying to invert truth all over the place. Right. And that was one of the things that was the reason why one of the reasons in the principles of the Republican Party when it was created in the 1800s was to abolish slavery. That was one of their goals. Yeah. And their first goal was to abolish it and not allow it in the Western expansion. That was their first mission. And then it became, because it wasn't allowed in most northern states, all right? And that's something that the left doesn't talk about. When they formed the Constitution, there was many northern states that did not want slavery, but the southern slaves, which became Democrats at the time, wanted to keep slavery. And that's why there's a lot of negotiations back and forth. And there's a big effort to keep, as soon as they could, they knew they wanted to get rid of slavery. So this misconception that America is born to this evil slave. No, we inherited slavery from the English. The English had slavery. We fought a revolution, and 60 years later we abolished it. And that's pretty fast. It's the fastest in the world that a new country, abolished slavery. So
and it took to the 90s for apartheid in South Africa, right? So
sorry.
I was gonna say it took until the 90s with Mandela with apartheid.
It took much longer for that. So there's a lot to it. So I believe in gay rights very similarly. You find my attitude is I tell my Democrat friends that how could you be Republican and gay? I'm like, well, we fought our own damn battle. By the way, neither party was helping us out. It was the night 2013 before Obama decided that he would support gay marriage after fighting it because he just saw the numbers that there was a political advantage to it. Believe me, it was a political calculation. Hillary had many, many homophobic remarks. She was no fan of gay people. I've done my research on it. I wrote a book and I included that in it. And only when it became politically expedient, they said, okay, we're going to get this demographic and start playing this hardcore identity politics game. That's when they accepted it. But gay people on their own got gay rights, pretty much. It was not Democrat. It was decades of struggle. No thanks to either party, to be honest. So gay people should have a little more pride in taking this on without either party. It was very late to the game that the parties, the Democrats came along, and now the vast majority Republicans have gay rights, the vast majority. So that's got to be in the rearview mirror very soon. Any kind of discrimination against gay people as well. So.
Interesting. So closing thoughts for you, John. Just want to hear, I guess, more on, obviously we talked a lot of macro, right? There's a lot of things going on in the country. That's obviously, those are the hot topics, right? We could talk about the individual little things in each town in Massachusetts,
sure.
Right? But, good that you have your opinions and your ideologies from a country standpoint, because that's important. You got to work with Congress, right? You got to work with one another, right? How would you work with some of your Democratic colleagues if you were elected or you're Republican, right? And then also what are some of your plans? I know you have like a 100-day plan you wanted to work on, right?
Sure. So simply, I want to work with what's best for my constituents and what's best for our state and country. And I will talk about, there's some representatives in the state that are Democrats, and I can't stand the votes they've had and their ideology. But there's some that work hard, and I don't want to say who because many of my colleagues are racing against them, and I want all of my Republican colleagues on the right to win Congress. But also, in fairness, there are some that are really good at constituent services, and they're not all wrapped up in ideology like Seth Moulton is or Ayanna Pressley. And my focus is I'm pro-American. I'm 100% pro-American and pro-Massachusetts, and here to serve the people. Work hard. I worked hard my entire life. I've had multiple businesses. I've always worked hard. The joke in my family is I'm single. I go on vacation with my extended family. They're like, here's John Paul on vacation on my computer. I'm working on phone calls. That's my whole entire life. I know how hard work is, and I know that many people are not. Seth Moulton, for example, is not serving the district. So I'm going to work hard. I'm going to look at job creation, lowering taxes, providing incentives for companies to come back to our district. We have Lynn. There's a lot of skilled people in like the city of Lynn, factories that were cleaned out, and we can bring people and fill those factories up from communist China, right? We could be taking so many thousands of jobs back to our district and back to our state. So that's one big thing I'm going to be doing for my district is bringing jobs, and a tax base back. And then secondly, I'm going to be making sure we look at security, law and order. We can't have the progressive mob showing up at our doors like they promise in the suburbs. They're already destroying the cities. We can't have Portland in our backyard in Massachusetts like the far left wants to do. So, and I'm a big supporter of the police. Of course, common sense reforms have to happen, but no dismantling, defunding police, reallocating money, which is the same as defunding. And then the third is opportunity for all. I have my 5-point star on my shirt is the 5 points of opportunity I talk about often, which is personal opportunity, economic, educational, social opportunity, and national opportunity. There's 5 meanings of that 5-point star, and every single point covers every point of government that it should be involved with. The government should be doing any more than that. It should be providing opportunity for people to have a better life, earn money, start a business, have educational choice, and be protected and have your civil rights covered. Be granted your civil rights, including religious rights, which should not be a disagreement between gay rights and religious rights. I'm going to make that one of my 100-day plan missions. Is I'm in this unique position where I'm a faithful Catholic, and I go to church regularly. I've been faithful my whole entire life. I've always been Republican. I've always been Catholic, and I've always been gay. And I know the dynamics of it all, and I believe I can be like that bridge that bring unity to our country in that level. So that's one thing I want to do, is end these racial disparities and bring true equality to gay Americans, making sure we protect our religious rights, right? So that's my big mission. And another thing I want to do is form the first Defensive Small Business Council in the United States House of Representatives. You take 50% of Americans that work for small businesses or own small businesses. We get together because we don't have lobbying power on our own. That's why we don't get special treatment and all kinds of passes from coronavirus rules. If you're a big, if you're Walmart, right? But if we can get people together, we can protect our small businesses that got many destroyed by overzealous government. Based on no science and no data, it's criminal what many businesses had to go through and how people's lives were economically destroyed by this. So I want to go to Congress and say, I will be the loudest voice for small business in the history of Congress. And I promise to do that. It's not going to be lobbying power because these small businesses don't have enough money to have that kind of lobbying power. We have to do it as a united front. So I believe that would really help. And I'm passionate about it. I've owned businesses, and I know you can't sleep at night. You don't take a paycheck. When money's low, you're the last one to get paid. You're the last one out the door. When you turn out the lights, and the stupid left has the gall to attack us, business owners and hard workers and entrepreneurs, is we're the enemy. Well, no, this is America. We're the people that make it work. And we should get a lot more respect than having our businesses shut down by these overzealous, crazy politicians that don't know anything about science, especially about something like the coronavirus.
Interesting.
So passionate, I know, but that's my.
No, well, you need to have that fire because it's usually the Democratic side has that same kind of energy. So you got to match them, right? You can't go in like a Mitch McConnell, right?
Well, you have to match them. We have the American society in our country and our states. So those are the big things I want to do. First for my district, because I can have most immediate, fastest, important impact. I'm hired to represent my district. I have to spend my time in my district. I'm only going to Washington to vote and do what I can. I'm not going to be lobbying and all the things that they do. And I mean, of course, I have to work with my colleagues in Washington, and I'll walk across the aisle. Of course, it has to be what's best for the people, not what's best for lining my pockets and pursuing some radical socialist agenda. And it has to be, how can we get jobs and provide security and jobs and education and market-based healthcare. I have a lot of other ideas about that, but common sense things that I think 80% of Americans agree on. And that's why I know I'm going to win if I get the word out. Because when I talk to people at the polls, are you Democrat, Republican? And I told them my ideas. I said, well, we haven't heard much about you, but we like you. We're going to either vote for you, we're going to look you up and see what you're all about because you're different. So, and you seem to really care about the district. I mean, I was at 18 polling locations yesterday. I'm not sure anybody else in Congress, many other places in the country, went to 18 locations over 13 hours like I did yesterday.
Huh.
So.
Wow. Well, no, you have a strong message, John, and obviously the fire is there. So just keep chugging along with it for sure. One more thing before I let you go is small businesses that you mentioned, right? That seems to be a really big focus on your campaign, especially in regards to the economy.
Yep.
I think you and I talked about a month ago when we first met. You want to do some kind of committee, I guess, for small businesses. Is that something you want to do when you're in Congress, or is that like something on the side you wanted to do?
All right. So yeah, good point on that. So I'm forming a meeting with small business owners. If people want to join, let me know. Please email me at info@johnpaulmoran.com. And let me know if you want to join. I'm going to be getting business owners together, small to medium-sized business owners, in a room in about 2 weeks, and we're going to sit down and talk. I'm going to do a listening session, and I want to hear what their biggest concerns are. And then because I have my own ideas. I'm a business owner, but I want to hear from people in the retail trade, in restaurants. I mean, I heard a lot already, but I want people to sit down and tell me what they think and what I can do constructively, what their ideas are, so that's the first step, is listening to my local constituents so I can help them when I did, and be taking those ideas to Congress. When I say Congress in my first 100 days, we're forming the small business, defensive small business. And I say defensive because we've been attacked, literally attacked by our own government. Sometimes there's, I understand people didn't know what coronavirus was the first month or two. We took precautions, but it was supposed to be to flatten the curve. And then that was a lie after lie after lie after lie. The curve was flattened months ago, and they will not let go of control of this stuff. And now that we know that it's like a tiny, tiny percentage of people dying from the actual virus, it is an outrage that they still are pulling these control tactics. So if we stand up together, we'll have a voice. If we don't, I mean, one business opens up, they'll be slammed right down, like that gym in New Jersey, another place you probably heard about in the news. We stood up together, the government could not stop us. So that's one big thing. So yeah, so people want to do that, that would be great. If people want to, we do need volunteers and we do need donors. So please go to my website, johnpaulmoran.com, and sign up. You can donate and you can sign up to volunteer. And we're having a volunteer event, a barbecue tomorrow night. At my property in Billerica, getting people together so we can get them going, because we will win, but we need to get support from people to do it.
Awesome. I was going to ask how people can reach out to you, so that's great that you mentioned that. One last, yes or no, if I get Seth Moulton on the show, would you debate him?
Oh, let me think about that for a second. Yes.
Awesome.
I mean, I just speak. I'm very well read. I'm ready for it, because this is the thing. It's not an ego thing. People have the right to know who's serving them in Congress, and they can't hide in Joe's basement. If he doesn't come on, I guess he's hiding in Joe's basement with Joe, because they have a right to hear who's representing them and hear the truth. And you can probably tell I just speak what I think. I'm not very filtered. There's someone in the White House that's like that, but I have a different approach, clearly, than our president. But I do believe it's important to be honest, direct, and speak the truth, and be direct, and give. And everybody's going to know exactly what I'm about. I'll put it right out. And if people say, I don't like that guy because I don't like small businesses, or I'm for socialism and communism and I don't like that guy, then don't vote for me. If you really think that I'm not going to be a socialist, I'm not a socialist. I'm for our police. I'm right out there. I'm not going to make excuses, or I'm not going to apologize. If you don't like me because I'm gay, I'm not going to get your vote, right? But I want to put it out there and then say, okay, compare me to Seth Moulton, and I'd love to do a debate and get people to hear it and not make it personal. It doesn't have to be personal. This is what I think, and this is what you'll get from me. This is what you'll get, and that what you'll get from Seth Moulton is what you got for the past 6 years, and probably more of the same.
Yeah, that won't happen on my show. Personal attacks. I'll cut that quick.
No, personal attacks. I mean, just in principle.
I know. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you're gonna have differences and all that stuff, but I always try to keep it, as political.
Oh yeah.
Not personal. Right? There's no need for it to get personal, and I think it's crazy that it's gotten that way, especially with the media, right?
I would do that. I'm 100% against that. There's plenty of policy things to talk about.
There's enough. Well, that, and there's enough media that already does that gets everyone fighting at each other. So who needs any more of that? Let's talk policy, right? John, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it, especially the hour. We kind of planned half, but talking with you.
You get all these rambling things and you go, but I'm glad. I hope you liked the conversation. I hope your audience liked it, because
certainly it was enlightening to hear your patriotism and your respect for our country and military, police, just patriotism overall. So once again, John, love to have you come on again, and we'll see what I can do with Seth.
Okay, sounds good, man. I'm looking forward to it, Kyle.
All right, you got